I want to ask you now, if you could say a little bit about the changes that have taken place for LGBT plus people in the Unitarian movement during the period in which you've been involved.
As I said earlier, when I arrived to begin my training in 1985, AIDS was really very much on the agenda, and there was a great deal of ignorance and fear about the matter, and a lot of negative sentiment about gay and lesbian people at the time was generated as a result of that fear. That, of course, is largely dissipated all these years later. But it was a very much a hothouse environment. There was a lot of pressure surrounding the issue, and it seemed to be the most divisive issue to raise in the life of the churches and chapels, particularly when I was in Northern Ireland. I was so surprised. So that is probably the most important thing, that the average person now in a congregation in one of the Unitarian churches and chapels in the General Assembly is much more informed on the subject and much more positive. I'm sure there are many people who still regard homosexuality as a sin or a disorder, an illness of some sort, but I shouldn't think that's the popular opinion. And I think homosexual relations between two people of homosexual orientation has changed people's views of it. Ours was the first denomination openly to bless same-sex relationships in this country, and now, of course, we allow marriages to take place between people of the same sex on chapel or church premises. So we've gone from decriminalization to full equality in the eyes of the law. And I think that has basically been mirrored, it's been reflected in the life of the churches. But each successive step to get us to where we are now has been painful and has been won, has been successfully achieved by people being very open and very persistent. And I say I must include myself in that category. A good example, when I was called to a ministry in England, initially, this would have been in 1999, I was asked to commit, to pledge that blessings, not just on chapel premises, but even in private homes or residences or secular settings. This is something I had done in Liverpool. I'd performed quite a few same-sex blessings. But when I began this ministry, I was asked to stop doing that. And with regret, I said, yes, I would agree to that if that was the caveat that would enable me to take up this ministry that was being offered to me. But I asked that we revisit this issue from time to time. Now, I was severely criticized by many of my colleagues at the time for accepting that caveat at the beginning of my ministry. And my thinking at the time was, if people get to know me, they will understand the subject better through direct contact with one person. And maybe they will grow and change their view. And that is precisely what happened. And I think if I had just said no and not accepted that appointment, then that growth would not have taken place, because I had to learn how to be honest and accept a limitation as to what I could do in my ministry. So I think everyone grew in that. And the most important thing for me to say at this stage is I left that ministry, but was invited back 5.5 years later to that same ministry. And to me, that speaks volumes that on 2 occasions, the same group of congregations chose an openly gay man to serve them. But of course, the second time round, there was much more experience of one another, and the issue had been thought through much more thoroughly.